Hello and welcome again to Investing Success and another of our short videos. Today is January the 24th, 2023. I want to take a look at a stock today that has got my attention, and it is called Leidos Holdings. The ticker on Nasdaq is LDOS. Leidos, very simply stated, is involved in intelligent automation and artificial intelligence, machine learning driven analytics. What does that mean? Well, for starters, it provides systems integration to air navigation service providers around the world. So if you are flying from point A to point B, the airline, the pilot, has obviously filed flight plans and relies on navigation systems. Well, somewhere in the mix, in the equation, behind the scenes, will be some software from Leidos. The company is also involved in health information management systems, digital transformation of health records and health systems, and in addition, it does research into life sciences and it develops life science applications. Lastly, it is involved in security solutions for air, land, sea, space, and even cyberspace. And one of the things that I haven't quite alluded to on here is the fact that Leidos can develop prototypes of applications and technology on a small scale to study how they work. So for example, NASA has every intention of putting a man on the moon again, and so Leidos has been contracted to design at the prototype small scale level a lunar landing module that the astronauts will use. And at the small scale, the scientists at NASA will be able to study this design and test it and improve it. And that way, when they go to make the real lunar landing module, all of the bugs have been effectively ironed out. Now, in terms of valuation, why has this got my attention? Well, the price to free cash flow ratio is 12 times. So that is to say, to buy $1 of free cash flow from Leidos, I'm effectively paying $12. Compare that to the overall Nasdaq index, where to buy $1 of free cash flow, I'm paying just over $21. So in terms of that metric, Leidos is definitely undervalued relative to its peers that comprise the Nasdaq index. In terms of a PE ratio, Leidos has a PE ratio of 19.77 times. Compare that to Nasdaq, which sports a PE ratio of 23 times. So again, Leidos, relative to its peers, is undervalued. So when I set about looking at a stock, one of the first things I do is generate a chart. Now you can do either bar charts or candlestick charts. Take your pick. In this case, I've done a candlestick chart. When I get the chart generated, the first thing that I immediately do is I overlay this dotted line. That is the 200-day moving average. And you can see on the chart that anything above the 200-day moving average, I regard that as bullish. Anything below, I regard as bearish. And if you go back to the early 1930s, and if you read books by the likes of the late venerable Harold Gartley, Mr. Gartley used the 200-day moving average as his so-called major trend. So right here and right now, January 24th, 2023, we would say that Leidos has a bearish major trend. And we can actually go back in time. Back in August, we can see that the price made a peak and it started to decline, and the major trend turned from bullish to bearish. It remained bearish all the way through September and through October, and it finally turned bullish again early in November. Remained bullish through November into December. It made a couple peaks along the way, came down in December, rallied a bit, but then in January, the price action broke below the 200-day, so the major trend went from bullish to bearish. And what I like about Leidos is the fact that it does have these swings. So for a person looking to do some trading, this is perfect. So you find opportunities when it's ready to shift from bearish to bullish. The other thing I want to draw your attention to on this chart is the descending green line, which starts at the $110 peak recorded back in December. And you'll notice that this green line has been drawn to incorporate several of the price highs along the way. That green line is what the Venerable Harold Gartley referred to as the intermediate trend. So here and now, Leidos has a bearish major trend below the 200-day average, and it has a bearish intermediate trend as well. So would a person buy Leidos right here, right now? No, not really, because you've got two trends that are working against you. You're going to wait until you see an improvement in those trends before you buy. The other feature I want to draw your attention to on the chart is I've incorporated several horizontal dashed lines. There's one in October, one that occurs in November, and another one in December, January. This is the concept of swing highs and swing lows. And back in the 1930s and 40s, W.D. Gann was very famous for using the concept of swing trading. So you can see that in August, the major trend shifted to bearish. Price came down, down, down into late September. The price then recovered, but pulled back into October. So that recovery and pullback creates what W.D. Gann would have called a swing peak or a swing high. Now, as the price pulls back from that swing high, could a person have bought the stock? Sure, but you don't know where it's going. It could easily have gone a lot lower. So what W.D. Gann in his technique advised was patiently waiting until price surpasses or takes out the swing high. And you can see that happened in late October, and it happened around the $93 per share level. And a person entering the trade at that point would have been able to ride it up to about $108. Now, in November, after it peaked at 108, it pulled back, thereby creating a swing high. What you're waiting for next is for price to recover and take out that prior swing high, and you can see that that happened at the end of November. Now, buyer beware, not every one of these swing trades is going to give you runaway trading profits. So here's an example of one that very quickly rose a couple dollars and then started to pull back. So hopefully an alert trader would have been able to get out of there with a little bit of profit, but most likely would have broken even. And such is the nature of swing trading. So from December, the price comes down and then recovers a little bit. And so by doing that, it has made what W.D. Gann would call a swing low or a swing valley. Now, this is going to catch the attention of short sellers. What they're looking for is for price to take out that prior swing valley. And you can see that it did that around about the 9th of January. And most likely a person going short at that point would still be short although in the past couple days, price has actually started to firm up a little bit. So a short seller might be contemplating some sort of an exit strategy. But if he is, that's fine. He's ridden it from about $103 down to $94. So it's been a very good short selling trade. So that's the concept then of swing trading. So once I've looked at the chart, once I've looked at major and intermediate trends and swing points, I next turn my attention to the astrology of the stock. So Leidos had its IPO, its first trade date, October 13th, 2006. And I've generated a horoscope image here to show where the planets were situated at that IPO date. One of the things I look for in these horoscope charts are very unique patterns, if they exist. And in the Leidos chart, I've got a couple of them. And they are both triangle patterns. There's a yellow triangle and there's an orange triangle. And you can see that both the yellow and the orange triangles have their apex right at the ascendant point, 17 degrees of Scorpio. And right at the ascendant point, you've got Mercury and you've got Jupiter. The other feature that catches my attention is the moon, which is at one of the apex points of the orange triangle. So the moon is at 14 of Cancer. So I'm going to be watching then for astrological occurrences involving this moon at 14 of Cancer and occurrences involving the ascendant point at 17 of Scorpio, which is the apex of the two triangles. So here's our stock chart again, and I've got a blue arrow situated in October at this low. What was significant about the low? Why did the price turn and reverse there? The sun was passing the natal sun location from the 2006 IPO horoscope. And in the world of financial astrology, sun passing the natal sun is always important. Mars passing the natal sun is another feature that I always look for. And all too often, they will align to swing points on the stock chart. This is a chart that incorporates events of the moon passing the natal moon location in the 2006 horoscope at that 14 of Cancer point. So it takes the moon roughly 29 days to make a complete revolution around the 12 signs of the horoscope. And what I find very fascinating about the Leidos chart is the impact of the moon passing the natal moon. You can see in the third week of September at this red arrow, the price suddenly dropped off. That is your moon passing your natal moon. In October, not only did we have the previously discussed astrological event, but we also had moon passing natal moon. And that's why this V bottom was so pronounced. In November, we had, again, moon passing natal moon. That's why the price rally that started in October fizzled out and it declined. We had in December, here's another one of moon passing natal moon. And we had another one here in January. So the fact that moon passing natal moon is going to give me these swing points has really got my attention, and I will be watching then for future such events on the Leidos stock chart. Now this chart here has a couple colored triangles. So in November we had the moon passing the natal moon, that's the red arrow. But I've also got a blue arrow. That is the ascendant passing the natal ascendant point, the apex point, on the 2006 stock chart. So anytime you get two Astro type events, that gets my attention. And you can see that this swing peak then was destined to happen. You had two Astro events that created it. And how do these Astro events create these swing points, you ask? Well, very simple. What happens in the cosmos affects our emotions. And there are two emotions that rule the stock market: fear and greed. And so starting in October, we had an Astro event that triggered a turnaround. We actually had two events that triggered a turnaround and a substantive rally. And that rally lasted into November, where you had two events that caused human emotion to shift from positive to being fearful. And people stopped buying and they started selling. And they sold, and the selling only lasted for a couple days, but it did drive the price down. Why did it stop? Because you had sun passing the apex point of the two triangles in the 2006 horoscope, and you also had moon passing natal moon. The other thing I look for, and not every stock is going to deliver this alignment, but I look for declination of the moon. And you can see on this chart, I've overlaid the chart with some blue little lightning type icons. I want to take you back to August of 2022. Price of Leidos makes a peak. Why? Because the moon was at its maximum declination. And moon, of all of the celestial bodies, plays a significant role on human emotion. Most people look at full moons and new moons. Yes, very important. I tend to focus on the declination of the moon, the distance above the horizon, and somehow, and I cannot explain this, but somehow the declination of the moon will affect human emotion. You can see here in September, we had again moon declination at its maximum, and look what happened to the share price. It suddenly peeled off. You had moon at its minimum declination, and that resulted in a little rally. In October, you had moon at its maximum declination, along with those other Astro events in the previous slides, and that triggered a change in human emotion. You had moon at its maximum declination in November, and again, that created this little swing bottom. You had moon at its maximum declination in around the 10th of December, and again, that aligns very closely with the price high. You had your moon at 0 degrees of declination around the 19th of December. Little swing on the price chart. Early January, you had your moon at maximum declination, and again, that's going to give me that swing point. So I always watch the declination of the moon, and going forward on Leidos, absolutely, I will be watching declination of the moon as well as other Astro events to give me the swings, and it is those swings that I will be looking to trade. The other thing I look at is for some evidence of symmetry, some evidence of harmony with nature, and Fibonacci. The Fibonacci retracements of 23.6%, 38.2%, 48.6, 61.8, 78.6. I watch for these things. So here's our chart of Leidos again. And you can see that in October, the various Astro events triggered the beginning of this move higher. And it finally worked its way up to about $110 a share, and it started to come down again. How much have we retraced as of just a couple days ago? 78.6%. So when I see something that has given back a Fibonacci 78.6% of a prior move up, that gets my attention. And I am now almost looking for some kind of a turn in Leidos. I have seen events on particular stocks where the price action does not stop at 78.6. It carries on, but I don't think that is going to be the case here with Leidos. And so, lastly, I not only look at the Astro Events, the declination of the moon, the Fibonacci retracements. I look for evidence on technical chart indicators. One of my favorites is the slow stochastic, and this thing was developed by a gentleman in Chicago in the, I'm going to say, early to mid 50s. His name was Ralph Dystant, and Ralph Dystant and his crew or his team developed these mathematical oscillators, slow stochastic being one of them. And they were way, way ahead of their time in the 1950s. And they reportedly made uber amounts of money trading commodities on the Chicago Board of Trade using the technical oscillators that they had devised. So I have reason to believe that we are about to make a turn here on Leidos. So what I'm going to be looking for then is for the slow stochastic to get above the bottom threshold. I'm not quite there yet. I will then be looking for confirmation that we have something like declination of moon, either at maximum, minimum, or zero. And I will be looking for further confirmation of something like moon passing the natal moon, something passing the ascendant point on the 2006 horoscope. So I'm basically looking for multiple pieces of evidence. I'm almost like a detective trying to solve a crime. And when I see these multiple pieces of evidence, then I am very likely to initiate the trade. So here and now, is there a trade to be had? Not quite yet. I need to see the slow stochastic improve a little bit more, and I need to see the Astro Events materialize. But I do think in the coming days I will get something, and that is basically how I approach trading on a short-term basis on any stock. So to summarize, if you have an ephemeris table, either a physical book on your desk or something online, you're going to be looking for sun passing the natal sun. That's going to happen once a year. You're going to be looking for potentially declination of moon, either maximum, minimum, or zero. You're going to be looking for moon passing natal moon. That's going to happen once a month. You're going to be looking for the sun passing the ascendant point. And again, that's going to happen once a year. And so keep an eye on all of these Astro events. Keep an eye on the stochastic type oscillator, and keep an eye on the swing points as per WD Gann. Keep an eye on the major trend. Is it bullish? Is it bearish? Keep an eye on the intermediate trend. Is it bullish? Is it bearish? And looking at any stock through those lenses, through that kaleidoscope, will give you a very different view. And you will learn to tune out the opinions that you hear in the financial media, and you will simply focus on the price action, which is a direct reflection of human emotion, and there are only two emotions, fear and greed, that drive the stock market. So thank you kindly for taking the time to listen today, and I also will conclude with a little note to consider getting your hands on my Financial Astrology Almanac, the 2023 version. It's available at Kindle and Kobo in ebook format. If you want the hardcover physical book, it's available through Amazon. If you don't like dealing with Amazon, go to a significant bookseller near you. And because my publisher has published this through a company in the United States called Ingram, major booksellers in Australia, the United States, Canada, and the UK can source the physical book for you through Ingram Printing and Publishing in the US. So there you have it. So thank you for listening, and keep your eyes on Leidos, ticker symbol LDOS on Nasdaq.